Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Dojo Live of 2021. Unfortunately, Tulio isn't here to join us today, so you're stuck with me, Kim Lantis, airing live from one of our offices here in Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico. Joining me is Carlos Ponce from Cuernavaca. Hey, Carlos.
Pleasure to be here, Savard. Kim.
And of course, today's guest, the most important person of all, Richard Galvez. Richard, you are the Director of Software and Data Science at Clean Robotics. I'm really excited about today's talk. I'm not zero waste by any stretch of the imagination, but I do try. And I'm really looking forward to learning about what I can do as an individual, what you're doing as a company to help us. But before we get into today's chosen topic, I would like to learn more about you. Who is Richard?
Sure, great. So my name's Richard Galvez, right? So I did a PhD in 2015 and actually in physics, theoretical physics, and I transitioned over into the AI space and data science in general. I was an academic by training, so I was a postdoc at Vanderbilt University after doing a PhD at Syracuse, and then also a postdoc at NYU, where I began a kind of a full transition into data science. I was there in the Center for Data Science, doing research in AI and trying to understand, what neural nets were really doing anyway. So after that, basically transitioned to industry, had always an interest in entrepreneurship and getting into the tech space. Finally had an opportunity to do that. First went to a large company, so went to Anheuser-Busch InBev, a Fortune 500 global company as a senior data scientist. Interesting experience, but I kind of figured out there that the startup world was really kind of like my calling. So I joined another company after that. 5x5 Technologies was there for a year as director of AI, pioneering 3D deep learning, whatever that may be. We can talk about that if you like.
Then we can skip that.
Oh, okay, sure, yeah. But around 2018, was it 2017? I had heard, so one of my friends, like longtime friends, Charles Yap, found out he was in the X Prize for Clean Robotics. He's one of the co-founders of the company. And I reached out and said, hey, buddy, if I can help you out with anything AI related, let me know. And he said, yes, please help. So I basically I joined as an advisor at that time. And just recently, about 5 months or so ago now, officially, they asked me to join full-time on board.
Nice.
So I was really excited about that. Yeah, we raised a bit of funding, had enough to really grow out a large team, or not large, but more than 2 co-founders, and then I officially came on board, and the rest is history. It's been a lot of fun so far. So
well,
that's
I have to be
now.
the one. The irony of like the earlier stages of your career being with what I understand to be one of the largest single-use beverage producers.
Yes,
in
absolutely.
the world.
Absolutely.
Kind of how that contrasts with something like Clean Robotics. Interesting.
Exactly. Yeah.
So tell us more about Clean Robotics. What does the company do?
Sure. So we make this. The overarching mission of the company is to basically apply tech, robotics, AI. Basically, what we have in the current innovations that have occurred of the day, to see if we could address large global issues that are affecting climate change, and also maybe ameliorate the effects of climate change on humanity's experience through that. So that's the overarching goal. But of course, we have to make money somehow. And in a more sort of focused way, our main product is called the Trashbot. So the Trashbot is this robotic trash. We call it a very, very smart trash can that automatically will, as soon as you put something in, it will identify it through AI means, like computer vision, and also there's a weight sensor that tells us a lot of information, and it tells us basically what the object is, whether or not it's a plastic bottle, whether or not it's a glass bottle, and also some very fine-grained details about that. So we have a current model that predict about 64 categories. So that's our current taxonomy.
Wow.
So yeah, and we're considering maybe so our major market at the moment is like high trafficked areas. So like imagine airports, arenas, like large concert arenas, things of this nature. That's where we can make the biggest impact, and where it also makes a lot of sense for our clients. So this is a space that it's kind of ripe for disruption. It has been ripe for disruption for some time, and we provide a lot of innovative techs, or through Trashbot, there's quite a nice, innovative sort of disruptive technology we bring to the client where they really have some major pain points. I'm happy to go into those. But basically, people are really happy when we tell them what we've got. So,
yeah, I would love to go into the pain points and the specifics of your Trashbot. I understand you have an image. What do you want to share the image with us, and then you can walk us through how that works?
Sure. So let me pull that up real quick.
So while we're waiting for that, what I'm visualizing here is a trash can with like one single entrance deposit, and then once it's inside, there's technology that's basically separating garbage.
That's correct. Yeah. So can you all see this?
I can.
Okay, cool. So yeah, on the left here, you see this Trashbot, our beloved robot. So the way it works is basically, so a user walks up to the device and deposits some item. So whether it's a plastic bottle that they just finished, consuming water from, or it could also be an entire bag of like leftovers that they're no longer eating. That's typically a problem, but I could address that. Anyway, the AI identifies what this is. AI plus the weight sensors and other, auxiliary sensors, and also interacts with the user. So, for example, something you mentioned. So, just to completely bifurcate on the topic here, you mentioned before that you wanted to figure out ways of being more, I guess, effective as a recycler. Well, the onus necessarily, we don't know if we philosophically agree that it should be on the individual to kind of make that to need to carry that burden. But in general, in the United States, the rules are everywhere. So, in fact, people are worse than random. This is a really fun fact we like to talk about. Given the opportunity, given an object, and given two choices, whether to recycle or put it in landfill, people are actively worse than random at figuring out where to put it, which is just ridiculous to us. But it's not necessarily because of it kind of is a bit of a lack of education, but it's not really the person's fault. It's so rules around the United States could differ wildly from zip code to zip code even. So where I am based in New York, I could recycle plastic bottles with no water in it with a cap on it, right? That's recyclable. However, I may go down to Queens, just nearby, and their rules might be different. So then they can't recycle, for instance.
Like the cap has to be off, and it
the
needs
cap
to
has
be
to be off,
crushed or something.
or something like that, or some arbitrary rule that's like difficult for people to kind of keep tabs on from depending on where they go from place to place. You can imagine being at an international airport where this might be an issue, right? You're traveling through, I don't know, wherever, you're not from there, and it becomes a bit of an issue.
Right. So it's interesting that this trash can is interacting with the user, as you mentioned. So yeah, I come up and I've got, my half-eaten hamburger and my soda container with ice in it, lid, straw, napkin, and I got to go catch my flight. Yeah. Boom. Can I leave it like that, or do I have to start interacting?
No, you do. You just leave it like that. The interaction is there to sort of educate or inform you that, hey, this wasn't recycled, like a big X or something, like this went to landfill or whatever, something like that. So this interactive feature is not necessarily interactive in the sense that you go up to it and then you have to further interact with it. You just deposit your item. So
it's not like a self-checkout at the grocery store.
No. You have to make it super simple, right? Like it has to be super practical. And so that's, we really focus on that. So anyway, coming back to this, so this, you could consider it more of an educational feedback. Let's call it that. Like that's probably more appropriate. So let's suppose that you throw away a plastic bottle, right? And you left a bit of water in it, right? So through that, then we say this is not recycled because it's a contaminated sample. So recyclables actually can't have any water or any substance in them whatsoever. So actually, like, imagine that you're at the TSA line, just like drink all your water real quick and then throw it out, and then that'll be recycled. But anyway, there's this interactive feature to this, and it kind of it immediately responds. But once the item is deposited, once it's identified by the AI, so actually let me back up for a second. So you throw an item in, a lid closes, right? So the lid closes, and there's a camera and a flash under the lid. So it'll take a picture of the device of the disposal, identify as to what it may be, and then simultaneously maybe give a message, and also decide which bin should it go into. So our original design was for one item at a time. So as you can see here, one of our earlier units. Now we're actually working on a object detection algorithm, which, let's suppose that you throw 3 banana peels in there. You'd be surprised when you look at pictures of trash all day or waste, how many times you come across bananas. Like for
It's
some
a
reason.
classic. It's a classic. Whenever there's an image like in a cartoon or whatever, it's the obligatory like banana peel. Like,
And so people feel obliged to put that in our Trashbot. So we have a lot of banana peel pictures. Anyway, so let's suppose we throw in like 3 banana peels, right? Then at that point, before, when we had a category called mixed items. So if you throw in too many things, like you mentioned, your cup along with your like half-eaten burger, it'll say there's more than one thing here, so let's put it automatically to landfill. Like, you have to make that choice. But now we're actually coming up with this object detection model, which will say there's a plastic bottle here, there's a plastic bottle here, there's a glass bottle here. All these 3 items are recyclable, so put them. And also we can identify that it's not contaminated, then we put it in the recycling stream. And so that's actually something that we're currently working on. But right now it's one item at a time. So beyond that, what's really
so
important
it's
to
all or nothing, basically.
at the moment, it's one item at a time, yeah.
Okay.
So, but we're active. That's an obvious place, like a low-hanging fruit for us to
Right.
develop further.
Or would
So
it be as simple as, like, are there any instructions for me at all as the user? Like, please insert your items one at a time, or how does that function?
Yeah, that's right. So there is. So as you can see here on the right, it's one item at a time. This on the left here, I mean, this is just for presentation purposes, but we're the design that actually goes out to clients says one item at a time.
I see.
Or deposit, yeah. So
or
it
something as simple as
informs.
there like a liquids container. Like, I can't, if I put this pop bottle with my 1/4 of a Coke in there, it's going to be rejected. But if I open that lid and I dump out the Coke here and put it in, it will be recycled.
That's correct. But we do not currently have that kind of information. Now, we could potentially put something like this on the screens. So thanks a lot for that tip, that input. It's something that we'll certainly consider. And I think it does make sense to have instructions like this for sure. But we really want to try to be as less intrusive as possible, because think about the current case. The current case is, you have 3 bins sitting next to each other. One says recyclables, one says landfill, one says maybe compost, depending on where you are. And it doesn't interact with you, it doesn't talk to you, it doesn't say, hi, welcome to the waste receptacle, right? Like, you also don't really want to shock people too much, I think, with like a brand new thing, right? You want to kind of like ease them in a bit. But I think having instructions like this makes perfect sense. So I think we'll certainly talk about that. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. My question is too, just going back to the humanity of it all. I've seen this, you hear cases of this, like we've got recycling separated, and then whoever the individual is who's responsible for collecting these things winds up throwing it all into the same stupid place anyway, and
That's right.
It's all for naught. Like, how far does this chain go, or how?
Yeah. So a large public space is kind of like let's imagine an airport as like a canonical example. So at an airport, actually, they're quite incentivized to make sure that this is actually that the streams are being kept intact. So for example, depending on where you are, at least in the US, and the situation is much more intense around the world, you have to pay quite a lot per kilogram of landfill versus kilogram of recyclables or kilogram of compost. And in certain cases, you might actually even be paid for those recyclables if you could ascertain a certain level of contamination that is below a certain amount. Then you could actually sell that to materials companies or other companies in general, like pretty straightforwardly. So airports are very much incentivized to actually make sure that this process works adequately. So in a place like a large public setting like this, there's plenty of rewards in place for people to actually make sure that is done correctly.
Richard,
Yeah.
I particularly find this technology fascinating. So as someone who's, as Kim, we're both interested in doing what we can, what's within our reach, as it pertains to, well, just at least lessening the impact of our habits, right? Our buying habits or whatever. But my question is, in terms of the actual costs of the technology, I mean, what stage are you in right now that would make it easier, or when do you envision that this technology would be readily available or reachable by the consumers? You know, the mainstream consumers at
Yeah,
Like,
large.
you
every
mean like
airport,
for
every shopping mall.
Every
okay, every
not only
airport,
that, but
shopping mall, yeah.
every home, right?
Every
Even
home. Okay,
even
those
every
are
home.
two. Yeah, that's a question A, question B. So
Right.
those are really good questions. But let's first talk about when would it be, or like what's our current state and where we're going to be soon,
Yes.
and whether or not there's a home unit in the near term. But anyway, so where we are at the moment is we've conducted a variety of pilots. We've sort of shown this proof of concept, and we've built out the software system to truly scale. So that's one of the main sort of things that I have been working on along with my colleagues at Clean Robotics, is to make sure that when a unit arrives somewhere, a brand new unit, you take all the plastic off, or whatever shipment it came in. Please try to put it right back in the machine. But anyway, from there you plug it in, and we just want it to operate, right? So we're in a state where that's the case, and overall, I would say there's about an order of 100 globally, from Australia to China, Singapore, the United States, around with different partners that we have. And we're actually right now in the process of engaging with a major contract manufacturer that's going to allow us to produce in the magnitude of hopefully tens of thousands next year. That's our goal. That's at least that's our, we want to get to that place where we can, if need be. But I think more reasonably, you can expect something like probably around 1,000 or so of these, and the order of magnitude of thousands of these machines mass produced by next year. So then by that point, we'll be able to satisfy a lot of the demand that we currently have. So there's a lot of people that call us from airports around the world and from arenas and venues like this that say, please send us 100, or certain corporate campuses, like let's say some major companies, like for example in the New York City area alone, corporates are really incentivized also to operate like large airports, in the sense that they would pay a lot for throwing out some land. So the gap between what they pay for landfill versus recyclables and compost is quite large. So they're incentivized heavily. From an economic standpoint, we like to try to make the argument that it's really quite straightforward, that it's a good idea for people to want to have these machines for them to function for them. But then there's of course also the global aspect of it. So to answer your first couple questions, right now we have the order of about 100 that are able to be operational, some that are on that we're currently transporting to clients and partners around the world, and we anticipate having about order of 1,000 next year, and we can have more, say tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands by the following year.
Cool.
But then for the home, so the home is an interesting case. The home is an interesting situation. We're currently considering that market. I could leave it at that. Maybe that's something I can't necessarily, let's say, talk about too liberally, but we're definitely thinking about it, considering it, whether it makes sort of that sort of sense for the world. Because we, at the end of the day, like I mentioned, we have to come up with a business model that makes sense from, the bottom line. But ultimately, we really consider ourselves to be social entrepreneurs that are trying to really better the world through the means of tech entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense. I think at least one would hope or think that in your own home, you have a higher level of responsibility, you have more time available to you, and at least I am more likely to recycle, right? I do try to do the reduce element first, right? I try to be conscious of, bringing, like I went to Starbucks this morning and I got it in my nice Ancora mug here, the camera's all screwing me up, I'm backwards, rather than, you know, the single-use cup. And if I do, you know, I rinse my plastic bottles, I put the lids in one place, I smash them, and I collect my plastic, and that's at home. But when you're
That's really great.
When you're on the move at an airport,
when you're on the move, it's more difficult.
Different, right? And
Absolutely.
so I think it makes a lot of sense to go to that market first.
But even in terms of, but sorry to interrupt you, but even in terms of people that really, so I think in general with all the people that we speak to, the general consumer, people really want to they really feel that, like, we all agree, right? We really have to do something to kind of better the situation of what's happening to the planet, no question, right? So people's hearts and efforts are in the right place. But really right now, it really comes down to the recycling rules in place to place are really complicated. So if I could just give so let me just give a couple like quick tips for consumers out, or like people out there, our audience that is like, I want to be better about recycling. Well, first of all, if you put a bunch of recyclables in a plastic bag and take that out and put it in like a recycling bin or wherever you might, like you have a refuse room or whatever, what have you, that automatically actually contaminates that sample, and that must go to landfill. So there's currently no infrastructure in place to really like discern if something's in a plastic bag. So put one item in at a time. Just, you know, that's one major sort of tip. Another one is if you deposit anything with substance within it, that's automatically contaminates an entire batch, and that also goes to landfill. So water bottles, for example, make sure they're empty. If you had like an old container of ketchup or something like this that was made out of glass, like just try to rinse it out, and then you could recycle that. So those, I think, are two major tips that I think could really help out the situation. And a lot of people don't really know that, right? So there's space in the home, and we are considering things like this, like potentially apps that could incentivize a user to maybe take a picture of everything that says recyclable, not, warning, this is contaminated, right? Using like an object detection model.
It'd be really cool to incorporate education in with that product.
That's the main reason the monitor exists. It was directly a request from clients. Like, cool. When you first see a big monitor on a waste bin, it's kind of shocking, right? You're like, why is there a monitor on this thing? Well, we were asked for it, basically, is the answer. And it makes a lot of sense, actually, after discussing with clients. Like, they want to be able to educate people on what's happening.
Richard, I'm curious about the AI component. Sure. And the software part of the equation, right?
Okay.
Because you're using AI, and you're going to be soon, I'm sure you're going to be having your trash bots all over the place. Are you envisioning the possibility of gathering data that could be of value and maybe step into the big data scenario to collaborate with other institutions or entities?
So we're quite a
higher level?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very open to collaboration. We always invite it. It's one of our main sort of principles that the climate tech space, we want to see the entire climate tech industry really grow, not just clean robotics. And we believe that we have to help each other out to kind of like bring us all up, right? So we're really open to collaboration. It's something that we really stand for. But to answer your question about big data, so I think we're there. we really consider, I mean, when you think about waste, like on average, order magnitude, one person throws out like 10 items per day, let's say, of waste. So they generate like 10 items of waste. So, and it's about 4.5 pounds if you look at it by weight that the average American throws out. So that's actually quite a lot of data super fast, right? So imagine that you actually had to catalog all of these items for just New York City, or a similar size city of like New York City. It's like, 10 million people, right? We're talking about 10 per, that's 100 million events per day, right? The data grows very quickly, very fast in this space, which we love, right? I think it's quite a sweet spot to be in terms of an AI company, because we need data to further our models, to improve them. So we collect a lot of data, and that's one of the major things that we provide back to our clients is access to their data. So this is a perfect leeway into this. So we have this analytics platform as well, these dashboards that show you, so as you can see here, like it gives you an idea of what are the main items that have been thrown out, which ones went to recycling, which ones went to landfill, compost, like items processed by count, by weight, and what's happening as a function per day. You could also see here like your recycled summary. So what's happening, what's the majority of what's being recycled, when it happened, I've blacked out some things here, which, not client sensitive information. But we have also here, say, for example, like metrics that are very interesting to our
We're
clients.
no
Like, what
longer
is your
seeing your
diversion
screen.
rate?
I'm not sure what happened, but
Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
that's okay.
Let me try one more time. What about now? Can you see it now?
Not quite yet.
We need to get him into the stream. To get it into the stream. Hold on 1 second.
Sure. Oh, there it goes. Okay.
There we
Well,
are.
was everyone able to see this?
We did see the Trashbot
okay.
prototype, and I'm not
Okay.
sure what else in the analytics.
So is this
platform.
analytics platform? Yeah, that's what I was discussing before. So this is the dashboard. So it shows the items that, the frequency of items, object counts, and given a certain date range. So clients really like this because it helps in one of the major business points that we sort of harp on, which is the this aspect of waste audits. So in general, if you're a large airport, for instance, or arena, you're required to have a waste audit once per year. And oftentimes they're very crude and not very good. And so
that makes the job easier.
Yeah, this makes it way easier. It's like everything's logged. And you also have this is what I was mentioning before, these metrics of interest to the client. Like, this is how much this diversion rate. So diversion rate for the people that don't work in the space is the amount of waste. Let's say percentage given by kilogram.
Okay.
That was going to go to landfill, what was diverted into that did not. And that amounts to a certain CO2 offset that people could even get tax incentives for this, right? So this helps them like considerably. And then one thing that's also kind of interesting, we also provide fullness monitoring for bins. So
I was going to ask you about that. I did notice something about like an alert to your cleaning crew.
Yeah, so this is a really wild stat, but and one pilot we did with a large international airport, we figured out that throughout just one terminal, it was like they were spending an extra 20K per month on plastic bags alone because people were coming by, because the custodians were coming and changing out the bins prematurely. Well, they were like 30% full. So this is like
and $20,000 worth of plastic bags is a lot of extra plastic bag trash going out into the environment. That doesn't need to be as well. Not just money.
Right. It's not just money. Yeah. So again, yeah, like we really care about the environmental impact, but we're like trained at this point to really speak on the financials of the matter, because that's really at the end of the day what really drives. Those are the major pain points for the clients, Yeah. So, but at the end of the day,
your mission, but you have to speak the language. It's getting your foot in the door and to ultimately accomplish the mission. Got it.
Exactly.
And
so
to
that's
eat,
actually. And yeah, exactly. But anyway, so that's a kind of like a good step into this fact. So we have this one impact study where we had 2 trash spots in a stadium for 1 year. Here's kind of like 3 interesting points to bring out. So one thing, so about 20,000 items were sorted with 90% accuracy. Now our AI model has actually gotten to the point where I think we're around 98% accurate as to which bin it goes into. And like I mentioned, the general public is pretty much random. So we like to give them the benefit of the doubt and say 30% accurate on a good day. Yeah, we diverted about 1.8 thousand pounds of recyclables compared to 650 with conventional bins. So it's quite an increase.
Double.
And offset about 5 tons of carbon dioxide. So it's equal to taking 1 car off the road for a year. Yeah. So
nice. Very cool. Well, we're coming to the end of our show today, Richard. Before we do that, we always like to ask our guests what the company culture is like. So how would you explain the company culture at Clean Robotics for those, I mean, you are the director of software engineering, those engineers who might be watching, who might want to be working with a company like yours?
Well, given the fact that, of course, my opinion is probably a bit biased, I'll speak as candidly as I can about it. I really love working with the people I work with. Like we really love what we're doing. We're really a mission-driven company, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. Like we just have a lot of fun doing it. We just come up with. We're doing like color augmentation recently, and a friend of mine was comparing his bananas to something that Andy Warhol would do, for example. You could probably imagine. this scene. But it was a lot of fun. We do enjoy the work quite a bit, and it's a lot of fun right now.
So it's a fun space where you get to do the software side, but also really hands-on physical world.
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect for you as a physicist.
Well, I can't ask for any more. Yeah.
All right. Very good. Oh, great.
It's been great to have you, Richard, on the show. Before we go off the air, and to add to what Kim asked you about the company, specifically about that's what the company looks like now internally. But what kind of people would you like to reel in the future? Like, what kind of mindset? What kind of let's call it talent. Are you looking for not talent but personalities? Are you beyond what we have described? What kind of people what are you look for? What do you look for in people to make sure that you're bringing the best of talent to the company?
I think for us it's really important to find people that really care about the problem. They really care about actually making a big impact on in any way they can, and also that they don't shy away from really complicated situations. I think being open to trying to address a problem that has no immediate even statement of the problem. It's a little bit vague and open-ended, and you're not really sure when it should be solved, if it should be solved, how quickly it should be solved, or what even is the problem. Is it a problem? These kind of people that are comfortable in these kind of ambiguous situations is what we really love. And so, yeah, I think really like driven people that have, depending on the role. I mean, not everyone has to have, technical chops, although that really doesn't hurt, of course. But for the most part, all around, across the board, we look for people that really care about making an impact,
right,
and are creative, about it.
Perfect, excellent. Well, thank you so much, Richard. This was the last show of the year. We're not having a recap on Monday, so but again, thank you so much for having devoted 30 minutes of your life to share with the world what you're doing, and of course, thanks to our viewers. Keep an eye on the upcoming shows for 2022. We got a lot of them coming up. I mean, we got.
But it is worth saying that we do have the design thinking segment with Tulio.
Oh, yes, with Tulio.
Starting on Monday. That would be Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Cool. Exactly. Well, pleasure was all mine. Thank you very much for having me. And also thanks to the audience. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Of course. So thank you so much. Stay with us as we go off the air. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
New Year.
Bye. Happy holidays.